इधर से घूम के आना पड़ेगा। प्रोजेक्टर के सामने से निकलेंगे ना।
आखिरी यही से अलग आके दे दो ना।
हाँ
चल मैं बताता हूँ। अभी देख लेते हैं।
अरे अंजलि का इतना सर आपको रहना पड़ेगा।
Good afternoon. On behalf of Department of Community Medicine, I welcome the resource persons and the audience for the World Malaria Day 2021, organized by our department, and the theme for this year is Reaching the Zero Malaria Target. In 2007, the World Health Assembly, the WHO member states marked 25th April as World Malaria Day. And since then, the World Malaria Day is observed on 25th of April. Malaria is a major public health problem in many developing and underdeveloped countries. Every year, there are more than 200 million new cases of malaria, and malaria is a preventable and treatable disease. And that's why there is a need to observe the Malaria Day in order to create the awareness about this major health issue. Let's see the global statistics of malaria. As per the World Malaria Report 2020, in 2019, there were an estimated 229 million cases of malaria worldwide. The estimated number of malaria deaths stood at 409,000 in 2019. Children below 5 years are the most vulnerable group affected by malaria, and in 2019, they accounted for 67% of all malaria deaths worldwide. Globally, most of the malaria cases and deaths occur in sub-Saharan Africa. However, the other WHO regions like Southeast Asia, Eastern Mediterranean, Western Pacific, and the Americas are also at risk of malaria. 11 highest burden countries in the world accounted 70% of malaria cases and 71% of estimated global deaths due to malaria, and India is one of these 11 highest burden countries in the malaria as far as malaria is concerned. Southeast Asia region malaria statistics. The Southeast Asia region is the second highest malaria burden region globally. In Southeast Asia region, 3 countries accounted for 98% of malaria cases, and among them, India contributed 58% cases, followed by Indonesia and Myanmar. According to the World Malaria Report 2019, India represents 3% of global malaria burden. Despite of being highest malaria burden country in the Southeast Asia region, India showed a reduction in reported malaria cases of 49%, and 50% deaths are reduced in 2019, and this is a big achievement as far as India is concerned. India achieved a reduction of 83.34% in malaria morbidity, and 92% of malaria mortality is reduced between the year of 2000 and 2019. In India, states like Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Meghalaya, Madhya Pradesh, and West Bengal, these are the high endemic states, and they accounted for 5% of the malaria cases in 2019. Southeast Asia region malaria unit is there in order to guide and support the member countries, and it is located in New Delhi. The workforce contains about 20 malariologists, entomologists, public health specialists, and health scientists. This Southeast Asia Region Malaria Unit provides technical guidance to the member states, as well as it also cooperates the member states for prevention and control of malaria. And the ultimate goal is eliminating malaria in Southeast Asia. National Framework for Malaria Elimination was launched in 2016. And in February 2016, Government of India launched this national framework in accordance to Global Technical Strategy for Malaria Elimination. India has a vision of malaria-free country by 2027 and elimination of malaria by 2030. WHO's high burden to high impact strategy has been initiated in 4 high endemic regions in India. Now, what are the strategies implemented in India in order to reduce the malaria burden? First is vector control strategies, and in this, use of long-lasting insecticide-treated nets is of importance. These nets are effective for 3 years in the field area, and these are to be used by people who are at risk. Second strategy for vector control is indoor residual sprays with insecticide in order to control the vectors. Another important strategy is early diagnosis and complete treatment of malaria. It reduces the disease burden, it prevents the malaria death, as well as it reduces the transmission of malaria also. The best available treatment is artemisinin-based combination therapy. Improvements in malaria prevention and control measures have dramatically reduced malaria in India. Behavior change communication approach should be more emphasized as far as vector control and use of personal protective measures are concerned. Behavior change communication is the key strategy to control the tribal malaria in India. Now, what are the challenges for malaria elimination in India? The first challenge is insecticide resistance. Anopheles develop resistance to many commonly used insecticides like DDT. So it is a big challenge. Another challenge is chloroquine resistance malaria. So chloroquine resistance is also an important issue, and that's why artemisinin is widely used nowadays. Third challenge is lack of integrated approach for vector management. So for vector management, integrated approach, including the environmental measures, biological measures, chemical measures should be there. Climate change favor the spread of vector-borne diseases. So the factors which increase these climate changes should be controlled. Surveillance systems needs to be more strengthened in order to eliminate the malaria. Elimination of malaria in the context of COVID-19. Since early 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted nearly all health services. Emergency services as well as routine health services are disturbed. In order to break the chain of transmission of COVID-19, many countries implemented restrictions as well as lockdown strategies. And because of these strategies, there are delays in delivery of malaria preventive measures like spraying of insecticides or distribution of insecticide treated net. E2020 initiative, it was launched by World Health Organization in 2017, and the goal was eliminating malaria within the 2020 timeline. WHO supported 21 countries in their efforts to get zero malaria cases within the 2020 timeline. And as per the report published on 21st April 2021, out of these 21 countries, 8 countries have succeeded in reporting zero malaria cases in 2020. And it's a remarkable achievement in view of ongoing global pandemic of COVID-19. And in order to take a cognizance of this achievement, the theme for this year is reaching zero malaria target. Now, these are the strategies adopted for elimination by these 8 countries. First is country ownership. Sustained government stewardship is vital for control of malaria, and political commitment needs to be translated into provision of resources and actions which saves the lives. Robust surveillance system is needed. Active as well as passive surveillance should be strengthened. Third strategy is leaving no one behind. ensuring access to prevention and treatment for all vulnerable groups is important. Next strategy is quality assured diagnostic improvements. Diagnostic techniques for rapid detection should be developed and quality should be maintained. And this is important strategy. Multi-sectoral collaboration along with health sector, other sectors like environment, irrigation, all these sectors should work in coordination, especially for control of vectors. Cross-border collaboration is also essential to control the malaria, and integrated responses, providing ongoing services for prevention, detection, and treatment of diseases is critical, especially in at-risk areas. So considering these strategies adopted by the countries who have succeeded in elimination of malaria, if India also implement these strategies, we can achieve the goal of malaria elimination by 2030 definitely. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much to Professor Auchat for giving an elaborate description of the problem of malaria. And as you know, this year's target is reaching zero status of malaria. That means the total elimination of malaria. For this, it is very important to be acquainted with the epidemiological features of the malaria, because without knowing the epidemiological features, we cannot achieve our target of controlling the malaria. So we have to see the epidemiological determinants which decide the occurrence of this disease in a particular community or area or city or worldwide for that matter. This is a disease which is transmitted by vector female Anopheles mosquito. Out of about 45 species of Anopheles mosquito in India, only a few are regarded as a vector of primary importance. These are Anopheles culiaceae, Anopheles pulvitalis, Anopheles stephensi, Anopheles minimus, Anopheles philippinensis, Anopheles sandicus, and Anopheles maculatus. The vector of major importance are Anopheles culiaceae in rural areas and Anopheles stephensi in urban areas. The main factors of vectorial importance are: first, the density. To be an effective vector, a species must be present in adequate density in or near the rural habitation. A sudden increase in density of vector may be a cause of epidemic outbreak. For every vector, a critical density is required, below which effective transmission cannot be maintained in a community. This level varies from species to species. Now, lifespan, the key factor in the transmission of malaria is the lifespan of the vector. So it is important to know that the vector mosquito must live for at least 10 to 12 days after an infected blood meal to become infected. The strategy in malaria eradication is to shorten the lifespan of mosquito to less than 10 days by insecticides so that it may not become infective to other people. Now, choice of host. Some mosquitoes prefer human blood, some animal blood, and some show great variation in their feeding habits. The percentage of human blood feed in the case of Anopheles culiaceae vary from 2 to 80%. In contrast to Anopheles pulvitalis is a highly anthropophilic species. The anthropophilic species, that is those that have a high preference for human blood, are better vector of malaria than zoophilic species. Resting habits. After a blood meal, some mosquitoes rest indoor on the walls for quite some time. This behavior pattern is known as endophilic. But there are some species which rest outdoors. These are known as exophilic. A knowledge of the resting habit, which must be under constant surveillance, is the basis of organizing rational anti-adult measures. The concept of malaria eradication is based on endophilism, that is indoor resting habits of most malaria vectors. Then the breeding habits are also important. The breeding habits of mosquito vary considerably. Knowledge of the breeding habits is required for conducting anti-larval operations. The time of biting, the majority of Indian mosquitoes bite at night except the Aedes mosquitoes. Anopheline mosquitoes have nocturnal feeding habits between dusk and dawn. Vectorial capacity, the term refers to the combined effect of the density of the vector population, its susceptibility to infection, lifespan, and probability of feeding on men. Then resistance to insecticide. On this depends the choice of insecticides to be used. When an insect vector is resistant to a given insecticide, alternative insecticides have to be used. Malaria in man is caused by 4 distinct species of malaria parasite: Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium falciparum, Plasmodium malariae, and Plasmodium ovale. The severity of malaria is related to the species. Mode of transmission, the vector transmission. Malaria is transmitted by the bite of certain species of infected female Anopheline mosquitoes. A single infected vector during her lifetime may infect several persons. The mosquito is not infective unless the sporozoites are present in its salivary gland. Then there is direct transmission also. The malaria may be induced accidentally by hypodermic, intramuscular, or intravenous injections of blood or plasma. For example, blood transfusion, and in malaria in drug addicts. So blood transfusion poses a problem because the parasite keeps their infective activity for at least 14 days in blood bottles stored at 4 degrees centigrade. So it is a great problem. Then congenital malaria. Congenital infections of the newborn from an infected mother may also occur, but it is a comparatively rare phenomenon. Coming to the life cycle, the malarian parasite undergoes 2 cycles of development. One is human cycle, that is asexual cycle, which starts from the entry of a sporozoite inside the body of the human being and up to its production of gametes after a hepatic and erythrocytic cycles. These gametes enter the body of mosquito and the mosquito cycle starts, that is the sexual cycle, where these gametes fuse and form a zygote which pierces the wall of the stomach of mosquito, and they are developed and then forms the sporozoites, which reaches the salivary gland and make the mosquito infected. So this is how the cycle takes place. Now, reservoir of infection. A human reservoir is a person who harbors the sexual forms of gametocytes. A patient can be a carrier of several Plasmodium species at the same time. Children are most likely to be carrier than adults. There are certain conditions to be fulfilled to be in the state of reservoir. The person must harbor both the sexes of the gametocytes in the blood. The gametocytes must be mature. The gametocytes must be viable. There must be at least 12 gametocytes per cubic millimeter of blood. This concentration is required to make the mosquito infect. Period of communicability, the malaria is communicable as long as mature viable gametocytes exist in the circulating blood in sufficient density to infect vector mosquitoes. Gametocytes are the most numerous during the early stage of infection when the density may exceed 1000 per cubic millimeter of blood. And I will again like to repeat that only 12 gametocytes per cubic millimeter density is required to make the mosquito infected. They also tend to occur in waves in the peripheral blood. Relapses. Vivax and oval malaria tend to relapse more than 3 years after the patient's first attack. The recurrence of falciparum usually disappears within 1 to 2 years. Plasmodium falciparum has a tendency to cause prolonged low-level asymptomatic parasitemia. Coming to the host factors, the age is very important. The malaria affects all ages. Newborn infants have considerable resistance to infection due to a high concentration of fetal hemoglobin during the first month of life. Then, as far as gender is concerned, males are more frequently exposed more than females due to their outdoor activities. Secondly, the females are better clothed than males. Pregnancy increases the risk of malaria in women. Malaria during pregnancy may cause intrauterine death in fetus. It may cause premature labor or abortion. Socioeconomic developments. Malaria demonstrated relationship with health and socioeconomic developments. It is observed that the malaria has disappeared from most developed countries due to socio-economic development. Then housing also plays an important role. Ill-ventilated and ill-lighted houses provide ideal indoor resting places for the mosquito. And population mobility is also responsible for the transmission of malaria. The laborers connected with engineering, irrigation, agricultural, and other projects, migrating nomads are more disposed to develop malaria. Occupation is also important. Malaria is predominantly a rural disease and has direct connection with agriculture and related occupations. Human habits such as sleeping out of doors, nomadism, absence of personal protection measures, this increases the risk of contracting malaria. The immunity also plays a role in the transmission. Epidemic malaria is influenced by the immune status of the population. Immunity is acquired only after repeated exposures over several years. Clinical course of malaria. Following a malaria by an infected mosquito, many people do not develop any sign of infection. If infection does progress, the outcome is one of the three, depending on the host and parasite factors. First is asymptomatic parasitemia, that is clinical immunity. Second is acute, simple, uncomplicated malaria. Third is severe malaria. Asymptomatic malaria, this is usually seen in older children and adults who have acquired natural immunity to clinical disease as a consequence of living in areas with high malaria endemicity. There are malaria parasites in the peripheral blood, but no symptoms. These individuals may be important reservoirs for disease transmission. Some individuals may even develop anti-parasitic immunity so that they do not develop parasitemia following infections. Simple, uncomplicated malaria. This can occur at any stage, but it is more likely to be seen in individuals with some degree of immunity to malaria. The affected persons, though ill, does not manifest life-threatening disease. Fever is the most common constant symptom of malaria. It may occur in paroxysm when lysis of red cells releases neurozoids, resulting in fever, chills, and rigor. Usually, there is uncontrollable shivering in cases of malaria. The typical attack comprises three distinct stages. First is the cold stage, second is the hot stage, and the third is the sweating stage. These are followed by an afebrile period in which the patient feels greatly relieved. The febrile paroxysms occur with definite intermittent periodicity, repeating every third or fourth day, depending upon the species of the parasite involved. The three classical stages are cold, hot, and sweating. They may not be always be observed due to maturation of generation of parasite at different times. Period of latency may last several weeks or months. The disease has a tendency to relapse and is characterized by an enlargement of the spleen and secondary anemia. Febrile herpes is common in all malaria patients. In Plasmodium falciparum infections, the primary fever in its first few days is usually irregular or even continuous. Then the classical 48 hours periodicity become established, or the fever may not, continue to be irregular. The hot and cold stages, so typical of other malaria infections, are less clearly seen, separated from each other. In persons with poor immunity, the paroxysms are associated with marked prostration. Headache, nausea, and vomiting are usually more severe. There is greater tendency towards the development of delirium, hemolytic jaundice, and anemia. The mortality is much greater than in other forms of malaria. In Plasmodium vivax infection, symptoms are same but are usually milder and more regular, dividing into hot and cold stages than in Plasmodium falciparum infections. In Plasmodium ovale infections differ little from that of Plasmodium vivax. However, they tend to be milder than Plasmodium vivax and cease after a few paroxysms, even if no treatment is given. Plasmodium malaria attacks resembles that of Plasmodium vivax, but the cycle is of 72 hours instead of 48 hours. The tendency for long-term relapses is remarkable. The complications of Plasmodium falciparum malaria are cerebral malaria, acute renal failure, renal damage, gastrointestinal symptoms, dehydration, collapse, anemia, black water fever, etc. The complication of Plasmodium vivax, ovale, and Plasmodium malaria infections are anemia, splenomegaly, enlargement of liver, herpes, renal complications, etc. The diagnosis of malaria depends on the demonstration of parasite in the blood. The microscopy is the first method of diagnosis. The two types of blood films are used in searching for the identification of the malaria parasite, the thin film and the thick film. It is recommended that both type of films be prepared on the same slide under the microscopic glass slide. Then serological tests are the second method. The malarial fluorescent antibody test usually becomes positive 2 weeks or more after the primary infection, by which time the infection may have been cured. A positive test is therefore not necessarily an indication of current infection. The test is of the greatest value in epidemiological studies and in determining whether a person has had malaria in the past. Third is the rapid diagnostic test, or RDT. The rapid diagnostic tests are based on the detection of the circulating parasites antigen with a simple dip-stick format. Several types of RDTs are available. Some of them can only detect Plasmodium falciparum, while others can detect other parasites also. The later kits are expensive and temperature sensitive. In pre-eradication era, the magnitude of the malaria problem in a country was determined mostly from the reports of the clinically diagnosed malaria cases. The classical malariometric measures are spleen rate, average enlargement of spleen, parasite rate, etc. These measures may provide only the needed information, that is the trend of the disease. And in the eradication era, which is current incidence level, the microscopic diagnosis of malaria cases become the main method of diagnosis. The parameters used for the measurement of malaria are mostly parasitological in nature. The commonly used parameters are annual parasite incidence, annual blood examination rate, annual falciparum incidence, slide positivity rate, and slide falciparum rate. Now, approaches and strategies for malaria control. Strategies action plan for malaria control in India were developed by Directorate of National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program. The strategies for prevention of the control of malaria and its transmission are surveillance and case management, that is the case detection, passive and active, early diagnosis and complete treatment, and sentinel surveillance. Integrated vector management is the key. The indoor residual spray, insecticide treated bed nets, and long-lasting insecticidal nets are used. Anti-larval measures, including source reduction, is very important. Epidemic preparedness and early response is another area of importance. The supportive interventions are capacity building, behavioral change in communication, intersectorial collaboration, monitoring and evaluation, and operation research and applied field research. Early diagnosis and treatment of malaria aims at complete cure, prevention, and of progression of uncomplicated malaria to several diseases, prevention of deaths, interruption of transmission, and minimizing the risk of selection and spread of drug-resistant malaria parasite. The best available treatment, particularly for malaria parasite, falciparum parasite, is artemisinin-based combination therapy. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to one and all. Thank you, Dr. Shukla sir, for such an lucid presentation on epidemiology of malaria. The topic I am going to present is the recent advances in malaria. As all these eminent speakers have spoken to us, they have told in detail what is malaria and what how it spreads, what is the epidemiology, what the control measures and everything. I will be limiting myself on the recent advances. Although malaria was discovered long back in late 18th, that was specifically more precisely in 1880 by Sir Alfonso Laveran. There was no change or nothing has happened as far as its staining methodology or staining any kind of diagnosis methodology modality as far as except Giemsa stain, Wright stain, or field stain. It only came in 1974 when QBC technique, that is quantitative Buffy code technique, has been discovered by scientists. The QBC technique was designed to enhance microscopic detection of parasites and simplify malaria diagnosis. You can see here in this QBC technique, the whole blood sample is centrifuged, and then you can see these small gametocytes in this green layer. This method involves staining of parasite deoxyDNA in microhematocrit tubes with fluorescent dyes, example acridine orange, and its subsequent detection by EPIC fluorescent microscopy. Briefly, finger prick blood is collected in a hematocrit tube containing acridine orange and anticoagulant. The tube is centrifuged at 12,000 RPM for 5 minutes and then immediately examined using the EPIC fluorescent microscope. Parasite nuclei fluorescent bright green while cytoplasm appears yellow-orange. The another breakthrough was rapid diagnostic test, RDTs. It has been approved by WHO, and it is there was urgent need for new, simple, and quick, accurate sort of testing modality. These are very cost-effective diagnostic tests, especially in African countries and even in Asian countries. There are various type of kits you can see in this picture. So just you have to put the drop over there, add the chemicals, and then you will get the whether it is. There are two types of these both type of rapid antigen kits where you can identify Plasmodium falciparum as well as Vivax, single or double. The another test which has been getting more importance is serological test. Immunofluorescence antibody, that is IFA, has been reliable serologic test of malaria in recent decades. Although IFA is time consuming and subjective, it is highly sensitive and specific. So the details I am not going to go into much details because there is time constraint and all. So this is based on spectrometry, and you can find out which type of bacteria, which type of parasite present in the blood sample, given blood sample. There are other scientists are working on other modalities like biosensors for malaria diagnosis. So various markers they are looking for, like liver stage markers, proteins, anti-CSP, LISP2, and diagnostic methods, immunoassay, and biosensor. So these are high-tech technologies. Scientists are still working on that. One day, we think we can still get that kind of advanced technology for diagnosis at cheaper rate. Another molecular diagnostic test, recent development in molecular biology technology, that is PCR, polymerase chain reaction, loop-mediated isothermal amplification, LAMP, microarray nucleic acid in the test sample of to probe on the array enabled the probing of multiple genes, flow cytometric FCM assay techniques based on detection of hemozyne, which is produced when the intraerythrocytic malarial parasite digests home hemoglobin, host hemoglobin. Mass spectrometry, direct ultraviolet laser desorption mass spectrometry, LDMS, and microfluidic cell enrichment and magnetic resonance relaxometry, MRR detection, Plasmodium specific phospholipidase A2 level in malaria. So these are all under scientists are still working on that, and will definitely we can have this all these techniques in future. So coming to the recent advances in treatment of malaria, Dr. Shukla sir has taken very detailed. He spoke about treatment of malaria in various various things like complicated malaria, uncomplicated malaria. So treating uncomplicated falciparum malaria, treat children and adults with uncomplicated Plasmodium falciparum malaria, except pregnant women in their first trimester with one of the following ACT: artemether plus lumefantrine, artesunate plus samidoprid, artesunate plus mefloquine, and dihydroartemisinin plus piperacin, artesunate plus sulfadoxine plus pyrimethamine. So these are some of the newer combinations we are using. Another next groundbreaking invention or thing which came into treatment of malaria is injectable artesunate. Artesunate for injection is now available for initial treatment of severe malaria in adult and pediatric patients. Artesunate and its metabolic dihydroartemisinin DHA are both active against the blood stage asexual parasite and gametocyte of Plasmodium species, including the chloroquine resistant strains. So treatment with artesunate for injection should always be followed by a complete treatment course of an appropriate oral anti-malarial regimen. Artesunate for injection is supplied in single dose vials containing 110 mg of artesunate as a powder for reconstitution with the supplied sterile unit. You can see this news clipping over here. So scientists and public personnel are still working on various modalities where we can hit the malarial parasite. So novel anti-malarial targets means so these wherever in the sexual and asexual cycle of the parasite, we can target them, we can hit them, we can kill them at various places. So the first one is malaria parasite proteases, phospholipidinosidol 4 kinase, PFPL4K inhibitor, targeting transporters, Plasmodium sugar transporter inhibitors. The next one is parasite lactate transporter inhibitor, P-type sodium ATPase inhibitor, then V-type hydrogen ATPase inhibitor, aquaporin 3 inhibitor, choline transport inhibitor, dehydroorate dehydrogenase inhibitor, isoprenoid biosynthesis inhibitor, and Farsi transferase inhibitor, Plasmodium falciparum transitionals elongation factor 2 inhibitor, and anti-adhesive polysaccharide inhibitor. So these are the modalities where you can kill the parasite whenever you have the treatment modality available. So the another one is malaria vaccines. So malaria vaccine is we are still working on malaria vaccination. So various there are various places, there are various phases in the cycle of malaria where we can hit again with vaccine. The first one is inhibition of merozoite invasion. We can still have various options over there. We can produce antibodies against the merozoite and we can prevent the transmission. The second one is prevention of IRBC mediated pathology. So this is another stage where we can use it at human beings. Then the killing of infected hepatocytes. This is again, we can use it at human level, and inhibition of sporozoite infection. So this is also this is also a stage where we can stop the malarial transmission. And this is inhibition of sexual stage development. So this is for the parasite itself, and we can hit it at the mosquito or vector level. Okay. So these are various malaria vaccines. Some of them are produced and they are under trial, and most of them are still scientists are working. Dr. Viplay Balo, head of GSK, invented malaria vaccine. Recombinant vaccine consists of circumsporozoid protein (CSP) from the pre-erythrocytic stage of Plasmodium falciparum parasites. The antibodies produced following the administration of CSP antigen will prevent the invasion of the hepatocyte by the parasites. Thus, the parasites, that is Plasmodium falciparum, are blocked from the infecting liver. It is marketed as Mosquirix. First vaccine against a parasite. This is getting green light from European Medicine Agency to vaccinate the infants outside European Union on 24th July of 2015. Vaccine against Plasmodium falciparum, not against Plasmodium vivax malaria. So these two are still yet to be discovered, and scientists must be working hard to develop vaccine against vivax and malaria. Administered at 6th, 10th, and 14th weeks of infancy, along with other childhood vaccines with booster dose at 18 to 28 months. Vaccine offers 27% of protection among infants between 6 to 12 weeks and 36% efficacy among infants of 5 to 17 months. So this is the recent breakthrough. Again, I would like to say there is a new vaccine has been produced by University of Oxford, and the vaccine has displayed efficacy of 77% in African children. So this is, I think, 3-4 days back. This has been taken place. Vaccine trial in all 450 children shows favorable safety profile, was well tolerated. So the vaccine candidate R21 Matrix M has excellent potential for large-scale manufacturing and low-cost supply. So this is a new breakthrough as far as vaccine production is concerned. So this is the same slide in elaborated way. The slide, the vaccine production we can hit at many places like mosquito sexual stages and sexual blood stages in human being and pre-erythrocytic stages in human being. So divided into three phases. So at these the various vaccine candidates, they are still in the trial and under production. So RTS-S is the first and to date the only vaccine that has demonstrated it can significantly reduce malaria and life-threatening severe malaria in young African children. Beginning in 2019, three sub-Saharan African countries, Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi, RTS-S/AS01. RTS-S is a vaccine that acts against Plasmodium falciparum, the deadliest malaria parasite globally and the most prevalent in Africa. In January 2016, the vaccine was recommended by WHO for pilot production in selected areas of 3 African countries. So this is again a newer avenue, malaria gene, beating malaria through genetics. So this is an organization, global community of genomic epidemiology network of scientists. They are working on gene modification of the malaria parasite as well as on vector of the malaria, which is responsible for malaria transmission, that is Anopheles, female Anopheles mosquito. Genetic variation at a particular place in the genome is responsible for protecting some children from the developing of severe malaria. Individual with sickle cell traits, we can find the association between sickle cell and the severity of malaria. Is 10 times less likely severe of clinical manifestation in sickle cell children. That is well proven. Another technique which is under development is CRISPR, CS9 gene editing technology. So this will be again ground-shattering invention if it happens. So gene editing technology to make changes in the mosquito genes that could reduce their ability to spread the malaria. This is again happening, and genetically modifying mosquitoes to express anti-malarial genes and pass them on their offspring is being tested as a new strategy to eliminate malaria. This has they have did it in they have trialed it in Brazil when there was Zika virus outbreak. So there are certain plants which have displayed anti-malarial properties. So these are Acacia farnesiana, that family Tarua padam. The bark is which the active principle is quinine. Then Caria papaya, then Cinnamonium, Citrus medica, Citrus sinensis, Proton pigillum, so Datura metal. So these are the various plants which has to be explored, and there can be many more potential Ayurvedic medicines if we can tap out. So the whole community, including WHO, has is working against malaria. The global WHO Global Malaria Program is planned, and it has been implemented from 2016 to 2030 with a vision to make malaria zero in the world. So, the strategy is adopted by the World Health Assembly in 2015. The strategy provides comprehensive technical guidance to the countries and development partners for the next 15 years, emphasizing the importance of scaling up malaria responses and moving towards elimination. So there are basically 3 pillars of this program. So the first pillar is ensure access to malaria prevention, diagnosis, and treatment as a part of universal health coverage. The second pillar is accelerate efforts towards elimination and attainment of malaria-free status. And the third pillar is transform malaria surveillance into key intervention. So active surveillance. So these are the 3 pillars which, with the help of which we can control the malaria. So the goal for this global strategy is reduce malaria mortality rate globally compared to 2015. By 2020, the goal set is 40%. By 2025 is 75%, and by 2030 is 90%. reduce malaria cases incidence globally compared with 2015. For 2020, the goal is 40%, 2025 is 75%, and 2030 is 90%. Eliminate malaria from the countries in which malaria was transmitted in 2015. So at least 10% in 2020. For 2025, the goal is at least 20 countries, and for 2030, at least 35 countries should be eliminated. Prevalent re-establishment of malaria in all countries that are malaria-free. Re-establishment is prevented by 2020. Re-establishment is prevented, and re-establishment is prevented in ensured in 2030 years. So even after global eradication or elimination of malaria, there will be some threat. So we have to foresee this threat potential, and we have to look into that. So what it could be? So vector insecticide resistance could be there, so that the program may encounter failures in future. Parasite gene deletions, so there will be some mutations, some sort of development in the parasite itself with the resistant strain, which can pose some problems in eradication or elimination. Parasite drug efficacy and resistance, it could be, again, resistance could have been developed, and there will be efficacy issues with the drug. And invasive vector species. So there can be possibility of having this invasive spread of Anopheles mosquito vector and their establishment in the ecosystem to which they are not naive causes and potential threat to the control and elimination of malaria. So these are still in scientific stages. What are the possibilities ahead? Scientists, they are working on fungus preparations. Fungus they are developing in laboratory, which can kill the vector. Okay, scientists genetically modify fungus to kill mosquitoes that spread malaria. The another possibility which we are looking forward is anti-malarial mosquito created using controversial genetic technology. Though the genetic modulation technology is controversial, but still it is double-sword weapon, and we can use it for good things also. 750 million genetically engineered mosquitoes approved for release in Florida. So this is again going on the thought process. They are still working on that. So this is how the gene modified mosquito, that is called as Project Eagle Nose. So this life cycle of mosquito, they have been trying to tackle and cut short and genetically modified. This is a good animation I would like to show.
What if you could use genetic engineering to stop humanity's most dangerous predator? The deadliest animal on the planet, responsible for the death of billions, the mighty mosquito. Along with other diseases, it plays host to malaria, one of the cruelest parasites on Earth, possibly the single biggest killer of humans in history. In 2015 alone, hundreds of millions were infected and almost 500,000 people died. A new technology could help us eradicate malaria forever. But to do so, we need to engineer a whole animal population. This is not a hypothetical problem. The modified mosquitoes already exist in a lab. Should we use the technology? And is malaria bad enough to...
So this is again under trial, and this is still going on. The dilemma will be there, and it has its own pros and cons. The cons are there will be these new genetically modified mosquitoes will be again bloodlust will be there. The same nuisance will be going to get experience. Itchiness will be there. So everything means except the transmission of malaria, all other nuisance we have to suffer of the mosquito parasite, mosquito vector. So that is what the dilemma is. So overall, we are rapidly heading for the reaching zero target of the whole mankind for as far as malaria is concerned. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me opportunity, Dr. Swami, Dr. Madam, Dr. team, Dr. Sunil Nafanaske sir and Dr. Patil Foundation for giving me the support. Thank you so much.